Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A120. Is this the best A batch released yet? And who exactly was Elijah Craig? Let's find out on the Mash and Drum. Reverend Elijah Craig was a Baptist preacher and active character in 1800s Kentucky. He was an educator, a road builder, entrepreneur, and built the first paper and wool mills in Fayette County, Virginia, which became Scott County, Kentucky, following Kentucky's statehood in 1792. Now, in approximately 1789, Elijah Craig founded a distillery, and it was his gift as a distiller and entrepreneur that established his place in history. He has been called the father of bourbon, or credited with the invention of bourbon by being the first person to pioneer the charring of oak barrels to age bourbon. So how did Elijah Craig become credited with this iconic moment in bourbon history? The truth is, we're not totally sure. A lot of the history is lost, and there are several versions of the story. One story tells of an accidental fire in Elijah's mill, which charred the wooden barrels and changed the whiskey inside. The other story is about Elijah Craig using old barrels previously containing fish and pickles to store his whiskey. But to get rid of that smell of fish and pickles before he added the whiskey to it, he charred the inside to get rid of that smell, therefore making the discovery of what a charred barrel does when aging new white whiskey. So the truth is, no one really knows how Elijah Craig began charring his barrels, or if he really was the first person to do it. All we know is that whoever did figured out how, inside a charred barrel, the clear, unaged corn whiskey becomes transformed into a bold, amber liquid with distinctively smooth and sweet flavor that makes bourbon so distinctive. However it happened, Elijah Craig is mostly credited with being the first distiller to age his whiskey in charred oak barrels, and Heaven Hill embraces that history with their Elijah Craig bourbon. That brings us to today's review for their newest release in the wildly popular barrel proof lineup, the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A120. Starting in 2017, Heaven Hill started including batch numbers on releases. The first letter of the batch number indicates which of that year's releases the bottle was a part of, starting with A, while the second digit is a number that determines the month of the year the bottle was released. The third and fourth digits indicate the year. There have been generally 3 releases a year that vary in proof. The A120 is the first release for 2020 and comes in at a hefty 136.6 proof. This is aged 12 years old and carries an MSRP of $65, but can sometimes be priced up to $100 depending where you live. All right, just to let you know, we're going to do a comparison from the A batches from the last 2 years to see how this year's A batch stacks up, and also the C919. I've had this a little bit already, as you could see. It's a really fantastic batch. So let's get into the note and see what we get. First thing you get is literally the top of a creme brulee, that hard caramelized sugar that just glazes the top of a good creme brulee. Just burnt sugars. Good amount of oak presence in here too. Now this is 136.6 proof, so it does come in a little bit hot, but it does open up rather nicely. I get like a gingerbread molasses type note, like a gingerbread cookie at Christmas time with that. If you ever had the gingerbread cookies with molasses in it, really good. Tons of vanilla as you would expect. A lot of oak character. Definitely some rich cinnamon and spices here too. As this has opened up a little bit, a hint of cherry is starting to come out too. A little a black cherry note, which I really like. I'm a sucker for black cherry ice cream, so the fact that I'm getting it here on the nose a little bit, it's really, really enticing. All right, let's go for a sip, see what we get. Cheers. What a flavor bomb on this one. Absolute sticky toffee caramel, coats the palate, hint of chocolate. I'm looking for that black cherry note to see if that makes its way on the palate as well that I was getting on the nose. I don't have it yet. Man, this is really oily, very viscous, 136.6 proof. Those rich congeners that comes out of the barrel that really just makes it so oily and viscous. First sip, unbelievable. All right, let's go for another sip. Man, more caramelized sugars, oak, definitely some vanilla extract on the palate as well. I think it's a little bit drying on the palate with that proof, but it's really, really good. I'm getting some of that vanilla and the chocolate a little bit on the finish too. Man, this is what you'd expect from a good Elijah Craig barrel proof, but I've never had an A batch that's been this good. So let's go for another sip. Oh, this is getting dangerous. So that was the third sip. And the third sip, this is starting not to drink like 136.6. Starting to get a little bit easier on the palate. It is definitely smoothing out. The finish is becoming a little bit more of a buttery toffee to go with that oak. Now I'm getting a little bit of the dark fruits. Not sure if it's a black cherry, but there is a fruity sweetness that's coming through. Could this be a regular cherry or just a bright red cherry? Maybe a black cherry. Now I'm in my own head trying to think what the hell it is. Man, this is really opening up nicely. Let's go for one last sip. Wow. By the time your palate gets used to this, this is dangerously easy to sip. Man, so up front, all those caramelized dark sugars, the vanilla, viscosity just kind of takes over the palate. It's really mouth coating. Vanillas. Then you start getting the dark fruits. Those oak tannins start kicking in. It is a little drying at first, but as you get used to it, this becomes a really easy to drink 136.6 bourbon, which is insane. Yeah, more of that black cherry note that's coming in, a little bit on the back end, or the red cherry. Man, maybe a slight hint of citrus in there too. This is really opening up nicely, and this is a fantastic, fantastic A batch. All right, guys, so we're just gonna do a little bit of a comparison here, just 4 Elijah Craig barrel proofs. I'm probably gonna pass out at the end of this video, but what we're gonna do here is we're gonna compare the last 2 years, the A batches, so the A119 and the A118, and then we're gonna compare it to the C919, which is my favorite batch from last year, because I think the A120 stacks up pretty well. So just to go over the proof points here, the A118 comes in at 130.6. The A119 is 135.2, and the C919 is 136.8. So it's only 0.2 higher than the A120. So let's try the A118, see where we get. And I'm gonna just keep comparing it to the A120. Oh yeah, the A120 is just so much more dark and richer on the nose. And that was always my issue with the A batches. They just seem to be not as powerful, not as punch you in the face with those flavors as I was getting in the C batches from year to year. C918, C919, even the C917 are some of my favorite batches that they released. Yeah, the A118 is a little bit more alcohol forward. You get some more ethanol on the nose. It is sweet. It is very caramel heavy, oak heavy as you would think from a Elijah Craig barrel proof. Let's go for a sip. Yeah, that one's really good, but that actually goes to more of the Heaven Hill flavor profile where it's a little bit more peanutty on the palate. This one isn't as viscous either. It is a lower proof. Still a delicious bourbon, but not as good as a drinking experience when you compare it to some of the others here. Let's go in for the A119. Now this one's a little bit higher. This is 135 proof. So on this nose, which I noticed, this one's a little bit more bitter coming off the nose. It's a lot of vanilla, but you're getting a lot of oak tannins coming off the nose here. There are some baking spices on the nose. This one is actually a little bit brighter on the fruit side. I'm getting a little bit more fruits out of this one on the nose, which is kind of nice. Let's go for a sip. Yeah, there's just something missing to it for me when you compare it to some of the other ones. If Elijah Craig barrel proof wasn't such a delicious product every time they put different batches out, I mean, it's really hard. I'm nitpicking here, guys. I mean, these are all really good in their own way. Some people really love the A batches. I happen to be a fan of the C batches, generally from year to year. But I think this is the first year that the A batch is going to be already amazing. Let's go back to the A119. Yeah, those layers of flavors are just thinning out a little bit too quickly. It's still very sweet, very delicious, very mouth coating, but I'm just not getting as much of a robust flavor punch like I am with the other two. All right, so the C919 was my favorite from last year and one of my whiskeys of the year. So let's compare it to the C919, see what we get. Now it's pretty close, but the A batch is giving me that black cherry note that I just absolutely love, which is differentiating it a little bit from the C919. I'm getting those nutty characteristics, that a little bit of fruit, but I'm getting way more fruit in the A120. The C19 is a freight train of brown sugar and vanilla and oak, which is what I love. But I'm also getting a little bit more of a spice kick on the C919, which is something I love because I think it gives a good balance of the sweetness. All right, C919. Yeah, the C919 was so good. Again, brown sugars, vanillas, touch of fruit, but not as much as the A120. But the thing about the C919 is you get a bite at the end. You get this really tingly, prickly type of finish to it. The A120 is finishing way easier, but providing just as much flavor as the C919 was. Go for the sip of the A120 again. This A120 easily beats out the A118 and the A119. It might even beat out the C919 for me at this point. The C919 is really good. Easily one of the best batches I've loved. My favorite batches from last year. But this A120 is adding this fruit note to it, this black cherry note that I'm getting that is just absolutely delicious. And the thing is that it's drinking smoother than the C919. The C919, even with all this air in it, is still giving me that bite at the end, which I do like. But this A120, man, when you keep sipping on this thing, this starts drinking like 110 rather than 136.6. Absolutely crazy. Easily the best A batch they've created since they started doing these 3-a-year releases. All right, let's go to the final breakdown. So price is about 65 bucks. Like I mentioned, you will see this a little bit higher, sometimes for 80. I've seen it as high as 100, but I don't really see it too much higher after that. As far as value goes, I think Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is probably the highest value bourbon on the market today, and I really hope it stays that way. If you get it for about $65, think about it. You're getting a 12-year-old bourbon, 12 years old, that's barrel proof for about 65 bucks. You think about the market today, 10, 11, 12, even some higher bourbons come in at way higher price than this. Think about 15-year-old bourbons you've seen that go well above 100, sometimes 200, $250. So at 65, 70, 80 bucks, this is an absolute steal and probably the highest value bourbon on the market. For availability, if I was gonna give a scale of needs improvement, it's pretty good, or it's great, I'll probably put this pretty good. The thing is that Elijah Craig Barrel Proof distributes really differently to different states. Some people get it really early, some people get it really late. Really depends on where you live. I know a couple people in different states that are just starting to see the C919. So not sure when they're gonna see the A120, but eventually it does get there. I just feel like in some states you're just gonna have to wait a little longer, unfortunately. And finally, is this a recommend? This is a hell yeah, because it is so freaking good. This Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, this batch, this A120 is easily the best batch, the best A batch that they've come out with in the last few years. It might also be one of the best batches they've released overall. It's really good. It's got those high impact flavors, the brown sugars, the viscosity, the way it coats your palate. Add in this black cherry chocolate flavor that comes in at the very end. The way it's opening up, easily a knockout of a batch and something that you must pick up if you see this. All right, everyone, well, I hope you enjoyed this review for the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A120. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Always love talking with you guys. If you've had this batch, let me know what you think of it. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on The Mash and Drum. Take care.